Today we're diving into a scenario that, for years, has been the stuff of nightmares for world leaders. A direct, all-out war between the United States and Iran. We're going to break down how decades of bad blood and critical mistakes could lead to something so devastating.
Let's set the scene. The date is February 28, 2026. This is the tipping point. For decades, this whole conflict between the U.S., its allies, and Iran, it was fought in the shadows. But on this day, it explodes right out into the open.
So what lit the fuse? A joint U.S.-Israeli military operation, codenamed Epic Fury. The strikes were fast, they were precise, and they were aimed right at the very top of the Iranian government. And they were brutally effective. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed. And with that one act, the entire Middle East was plunged into the war that everyone had seen coming, but hoped they could avoid.
The human cost was immediate, and it was staggering. The very first wave of attacks and the retaliation that followed reportedly took the lives of over 1,500 civilians. It was a terrifying sign of what was to come.
And that violence just kicked off a humanitarian crisis on an unbelievable scale. As the bombs fell and the front lines kept shifting, an estimated 3.2 million people were forced to run for their lives, creating a refugee crisis that completely overwhelmed the region. Of course, Iran's response was swift and absolute. Their foreign minister didn't mince words, calling it an act of war. Tehran didn't just retaliate directly, it activated its entire network of regional proxies. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, they immediately jumped into the fight, unleashing a storm of rockets on U.S. and Israeli targets.
So you have to ask, how did it ever come to this? A war on this scale doesn't just happen overnight. No way. It's the product of decades of hostility, of broken promises, and simmering proxy fights. To really get a handle on the explosion of 2026, we've got to go back in time.
Okay, so what's really crucial to understand is that the U.S. and Iran, well, they weren't always enemies. Not at all. In fact, for a big chunk of the 20th century, they were actually close allies in a really tough neighborhood. So what on earth changed?
The whole relationship really started to crack and then shatter over a few key events. Back in 1953, a U.S.-backed coup planted these deep, deep seeds of resentment. Then, the 1979 Islamic Revolution was the final straw, the point of no return. And by 1980, all formal diplomatic ties between the two countries were just gone.
And I mean, the shift was total. It was like night and day. Before 1979, the Shah of Iran was a cornerstone of U.S. policy during the Cold War, a really important partner. After the revolution, that alliance was just replaced with pure hostility. Each country basically saw the other as its number one enemy in the Middle East.
For many Iranians, this right here, this is the original sin, the 1953 coup. It toppled the democratically elected leader just to protect Western oil interests, and that single event became the foundation for their mistrust of the United States, a powerful, lasting symbol of foreign meddling.
All right, so fast forward a bit. In the last couple of decades, all that bad blood, all that hostility has really crystallized around one central, massive issue that has pretty much overshadowed everything else: Iran's nuclear program. You know, in 2015, it actually seemed like there was a way out. The JCPOA, or the Iran nuclear deal, was signed. It was this huge diplomatic breakthrough designed to put a lid on the whole crisis. The deal was simple. You lift the crushing economic sanctions, and in return, Iran agrees to seriously limit its nuclear program and allow for some really tough international inspections.
But that deal, well, it turned out to be incredibly fragile. In 2018, the United States just pulled out, all on its own, and slapped a maximum pressure campaign of sanctions back on Iran. So what did Tehran do? It started openly breaking the deal's limits, enriching uranium to much higher levels. And that set off major alarm bells in Washington and Jerusalem. That diplomatic off-ramp, it was pretty much closed for business.
So diplomacy is dead. A direct war? That still seems way too costly for everybody involved. So the conflict moves. It goes into the shadows. For years, Iran and its adversaries fought this undeclared war all across the Middle East, using other groups, proxies, to do the fighting for them.
And this is what's known as Iran's axis of resistance. Through its elite Quds force, which is kind of like the external special ops wing of the Revolutionary Guard, Iran armed, trained, and funded this really powerful network of militant groups. We're talking about everyone from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthi in Yemen. These groups basically became the tip of Iran's spear, letting it hit U.S. and Israeli interests without kicking off a direct war. And listen, this was no small-time investment. The U.S. government estimated that Iran was pouring over $1 billion a year into financing this proxy network. That's a huge reason why it was designated as the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism.
The real turning point came in 2024. That's when the shadow war finally broke into the light. For the very first time, Israel and Iran started trading direct military fire. After a suspected Israeli strike hit Iranian commanders in Syria, Iran launched this unbelievable barrage of drones and missiles directly at Israel. The unspoken rules of the game? They were completely shattered, setting the stage for the all-out war of 2026.
Which brings us right back to our scenarios present, April 2026. After nearly 2 months of intense, brutal fighting, the entire region is just locked in this very dangerous stalemate. A brief ceasefire already failed, and it looks like both sides are just digging in for a long, ugly conflict.
And the global consequences are already catastrophic. Iran has basically shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That's a vital choke point for almost a fifth of the entire world's oil supply. With peace talks stalled, the world is now facing a massive energy shock, with just devastating effects on the global economy.
And so this is the one question that's hanging over the entire world. Diplomatic channels have been severed, the region is on a full war footing, and global energy markets are in total chaos. What happens now?
I think this warning from the head of the International Energy Agency just says it all. A war between Iran and the U.S. isn't some regional problem. It's a global crisis. And in this scenario, there is absolutely no clear end in sight.